So what is this thing called the fourth sector? So we've had three sectors of our economy for a very long time. We've had the public sector, which is our government. We've had the private sector, which is our for-profit sector, been around for hundreds of years. The plural sector, which is done differently in the United States. I think it's safe to say than it is in a lot of other places in the world. And that plural sector includes our nonprofits, our NGOs, and other parts of the world. It might be a co-op or something of that formation. And so Stanford renamed that the plural sector a few years ago, and it kind of led way for what is the next evolution, and that's where we get the fourth sector. And so in 2011, Hirad Sabeti talked about how the rise of this sector is likely to reshape the future of capitalism. Then you fast forward to 2018 and 2019, and you see the Mr. Larry Fink, who is the CEO of BlackRock and manages several $1 trillion in investments every year, that writes a letter every year to CEOs, specifically focused on Fortune 500 companies, letting them know what trends he's seeing in the market. And in 2018, the title of Mr. Fink's letter was A Sense of Purpose. And he doesn't typically write letters of the same topic 2 years in a row, but sure enough, again in 2019, the title of his letter was Purpose and Profit. And in these letters to CEOs, Mr. Fink is letting them know that this social impact, this responsibility to communities and our society is incredibly important, and that as businesses and both private and public organizations, we really, really need to have a commitment level to that, or you may not survive as an organization. So when I went to my guidance counselor in high school and said, hey, what are my options? I think a lot of us were given the choice of either working for a nonprofit, and we joke a little bit here because we all work for a nonprofit about taking a vow of poverty, and you are just completely excited about the work that you're doing, but maybe it's not, the money that you're earning isn't representative of that skill set that you have sometimes. Or you could go work for a for-profit company and you could make a ton of money. But maybe you wouldn't feel fulfilled every day. And so trying to figure out which way you were going to go with that was a tough choice. And so at the Institute, we wanted to make sure that we were expanding on what those choices were. And our CEO, Jonathan Liebert, created this model so that we could talk about what this fourth sector looks like and how there's a whole continuum of choices that comes between for-profit and nonprofit now. So in this fourth sector, we don't care what your tax status is. It doesn't matter if you're a for-profit or a nonprofit. That is specific to your business model and what works best for you. But there are already a whole array of options that you can choose from in this sector. And there's bound to be more. There's so many in-betweens. So the first part of the sector on that far left side of the slide next to nonprofit is social enterprise. And so for social enterprise, this is a business that solves to exist a social issue. And we'll talk about some examples here on the next slide, but this is oftentimes a nonprofit, but it can also be a for-profit entity. You have a social business, which is a business that has both commercial and social goals woven into the fabric of it. We'll talk about an example there, but oftentimes the social business is not the entity that's doing the work. They are often doing a portion of what they make in a very different way from CSR. We'll talk about that as well, but a portion of what they make that's committed to going to solve that social issue. A social business can also be a nonprofit or a for-profit. Conscious capitalism, which has been around for around a decade since John Mackey and Raj Sisodia wrote the book on it, literally. And that has been an evolution from companies really that started as Fortune 500s and are doing things differently. And we'll talk more in depth about that model here shortly as well. and those companies are only for-profit companies, as are the social impact legal entity for the time being, off to your far right there. And so the legal entities that are most common right now, 35 states and the District of Columbia have approved benefit corporations in some form. And the B Labs group has done a great job championing that and spreading that across the United States as an option for a legal entity. Several states have other options in addition or in lieu of that. So Oregon, Washington, Texas, California all have some other legal entities as well to be able to identify yourself as a social impact company and keep that as a core part of why you exist.